Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She didn't say it like a confession. She said it like a calendar update. We were standing in the kitchen, the kind of quiet that only exists when two people have already stopped trying. She said she needed to pause intimacy, that it was just a phase. Growth. Space. Words that sounded clean enough to hide what was already gone. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because engineers don't argue with data. And everything in her voice said the same thing. The warmth had been redirected. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to. That night, we sat on opposite ends of the couch. The TV was on, some menu screen glowing blue, an Xbox controller resting in my hand like a prop. I didn't play. Neither did she. We just existed in parallel, sharing air and nothing else. She scrolled her phone. I watched the reflection of her screen flicker across the dark window. Notifications lighting up, dying, lighting again. She started coming home later after that. Said she had meetings, openings, conversations that ran long. Once, close to midnight, I smelled fast food when she walked past me. Taco Bell wrappers folded neatly into her bag like evidence she forgot to hide. She didn't look at me. She never did when she was full of someone else's attention. I work with infrastructure. Bridges, systems, timelines measured in months and years. When something stops carrying weight, you don't scream at it. You reroute. You shut sections down before they collapse. That's what her sentence did to me. It didn't hurt the way betrayal is supposed to hurt. It clarified. The next morning, I stopped reaching for her. No good morning texts. No checking her schedule. No asking when she'd be home. I muted the shared calendar on my phone. Left the group chat with her friends without announcing it. It felt less like revenge and more like maintenance. She noticed, but only enough to be confused. Confusion is comfortable when you still believe you're in control. She thought the pause was about bodies. She didn't realize it came with silence. And silence, once it settles in, doesn't rush to leave. That was the first day I stopped loving her out loud. The first crack didn't come from her. It never does. It came from someone who had no reason to lie to me. A guy from my team, Mark, mentioned her name one afternoon like it was nothing. We were reviewing site drawings, concrete loads, tolerances. He said he'd seen my wife at a gallery event the night before. Said she looked energized, focused, not in a social way, in a way that happens when someone finally feels seen. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Engineers hear what's left unsaid. That evening, I drove home later than usual. Took the long route. Parked and sat in the truck for a minute, engine ticking, letting the day settle. The house lights were on, but the place felt staged, like a model unit no one actually lives in. She wasn't home yet. I walked through rooms that still looked like us, but didn't feel like anything. A half-finished project leaning against the wall. A candle she liked burning down unevenly. I noticed a small box on the counter that hadn't been there before. Pandora. The logo was subtle. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for reasons. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Gifts don't show up without context. And I was done asking for explanations that were already rehearsed. She came in close to 11. Said she'd lost track of time talking with a mentor who was visiting from out of state. Someone important. Someone generous with advice. She said it like she was reporting a promotion. I listen the way I listen when subcontractors overpromise. Calm. Detached. Already adjusting timelines in my head. Later, we sat in the living room again. Same couch. Same distance. The Xbox hummed quietly, updating something neither of us would touch. She talked about ideas, about growth, about conversations that made her feel expanded. I nodded once or twice. Not because I agreed. Because acknowledging noise is different from letting it in. That night, I deleted her from my emergency contacts. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. If something failed, I needed to know exactly who I could rely on. She went to bed before me. I stayed up, scrolling Facebook Marketplace, listing things we didn't really need anymore. A chair. Some tools. Pieces of a life that had already started downsizing itself. I wasn't angry. Anger would have meant she still had access. This was quieter than that. More permanent. She thought she was evolving. She didn't realize she'd just handed me the blueprint. I didn't go looking for proof. Proof finds you when you stop pretending not to see patterns. It started with timing. Her late nights stopped being random. Tuesdays and Thursdays became predictable gaps. She'd leave with the same outfit energy she used to save for openings, not meetings. Clean lines. Careful makeup. A focus that wasn't meant for me. I stopped asking questions and started logging data the way I always had. Quietly. Precisely. One afternoon, I left work early and drove to Lowe's, not because I needed anything urgent, but because being home felt premature. I walked the aisle slowly, touching materials I didn't plan to buy. Wood. Fasteners. Things built to hold weight. I realized I was more grounded there than in my own living room. When I checked my phone, there was a charge notification. Hotel. Midweek. Not far from the gallery district. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't forward it to myself. Evidence doesn't need ceremony when the conclusion is already clear. That night, she left her phone on the counter when she showered. I didn't touch it. Didn't unlock it. I caught a glimpse of a notification preview as it lit up. A name I didn't recognize, followed by a sentence fragment that didn't belong to mentorship. That was enough. Later, I noticed the bracelet again. The Pandora one. She wore it like it had always been there, like it hadn't arrived with intention. When she lifted her glass, the metal caught the light. I watched it move against her wrist and thought about how easily people normalize symbols once they stop fearing being questioned. We sat together that evening, the TV on low, the Xbox controller between us like a shared relic. She talked. I listened. Or rather, I measured. The way her voice softened when she mentioned his name. The way she never said his full title, just enough to elevate him without explaining why. Influence does that. It reshapes tone before it reshapes behavior. That was the moment I stopped sleeping in the same rhythm as her. Early mornings became mine. I started running before sunrise, letting the cold do what emotions couldn't. I extended my workdays without explanation. Changed routes. Changed habits. Removed my location from shared apps. Not dramatically. Casually. Like someone rearranging furniture in a room that was already emptying. She didn't notice the changes right away. People rarely do when they think the other person is still waiting. By the time she realized I wasn't reacting, I had already moved past needing confirmation. I wasn't collecting proof anymore. I was preparing an exit that didn't require permission. She thought she was hiding something. What she didn't understand was that once I saw the structure failing, my job wasn't to confront it. It was to step out before it collapsed on me. I didn't announce that I was leaving. Disappearances only work when they're quiet. The first thing I shut down wasn't physical. It was access. I removed her from my cloud storage, logged out of shared apps, changed passwords she never thought she needed because she believed proximity was permanent. I stopped syncing my schedule to anything she could see. My phone went silent in ways she didn't understand yet. She noticed when her card declined buying coffee one afternoon. She texted me a question mark. No accusation, just confusion. I didn't answer. Silence is clearer than explanations when someone's used to being updated. That night, she didn't come home. Later I saw the familiar charge again. Taco Bell, close to midnight. Same location as before. Same pattern. I didn't feel anything sharp. It was duller than that. Like pressure easing after a long time under strain. The next morning, I left before sunrise. No note. No warning. I took the truck and drove out of the city, letting distance do the work I refused to do emotionally. I didn't turn my phone off. I just stopped checking it. There's a difference. I spent the day moving through places where no one knew me as her husband. A gym I'd never used. A diner where no one asked questions. In between, I listed more items on Facebook Marketplace. Things tied to routines we used to share. The couch. Extra shelves. Pieces that made the house feel occupied even when it wasn't. Buyers messaged. I responded calmly. Logistics are grounding. By the time I checked my phone that evening, there were missed calls. Messages stacked on each other, escalating from casual to frantic. She asked where I was. If I was okay. If this was part of the phase. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted her to panic. Because I needed to see what happened when she couldn't reach me. I stayed away 2 nights. Then 3. I watched her activity from a distance she didn't know existed. She posted less. Checked in more. Reached outward instead of inward. People do that when their anchor moves. When I finally drove back, it was early morning. The house was quiet. Her things were everywhere. Mine were already mentally gone. I slept in the guest room without making it obvious. She woke up and saw my car outside, and relief crossed her face before she realized I wasn't where she expected me to be. She stood in the hallway, uncertain, waiting for explanation, waiting for reaction. I gave her neither. Disappearing isn't about leaving forever. It's about leaving long enough for the other person to realize how much control they lost when you stopped participating. And that was the moment the phase stopped belonging to her. I never planned to confront him. Men like that don't respond to confrontation. They respond to exposure they didn't see coming. His name surfaced quietly, the way influential names always do. Not through her. Through overlap. A grand announcement. A panel schedule. An article shared too many times in the same circle. He curated narratives for a living. Reputation was his currency. I work with systems that fail when one load is miscalculated. The principle is the same. I didn't dig through her messages. I didn't need to. I mapped timelines instead. His visits lined up with her absences. Hotel charges clustered around gallery events he was tied to. There was a rhythm to it, and rhythm always reveals intent. One Saturday morning, I stopped by Lowe's again, buying materials I didn't immediately need. Not for the house. For something smaller. Portable. I spent the afternoon fixing a storage unit I'd rented quietly the week before. Somewhere to put what I was already detaching from. Somewhere neutral. In between tasks, I made calls. Not accusations. Clarifications. Questions framed as curiosity. I let information travel without my fingerprints on it. An assistant mentioned a conflict of interest. Someone else raised an eyebrow about blurred lines between mentorship and access. I didn't push. Pressure works best when it looks organic. By Monday, the tone around his name shifted. Subtle but real. Invitations paused. A scheduled talk was postponed without explanation. These environments pretend to be progressive, but they're allergic to liability. I didn't need him punished. I needed him destabilized. She sensed it before she understood it. Her confidence thinned. She checked her phone more often, less satisfied by what she saw. The bracelet stayed on her wrist, but she touched it like it needed reassurance. Pandora only sparkles when it means something. When meaning fades, it's just metal. That evening, she tried to reconnect. Not physically, emotionally. She asked if something was wrong with me. Said I felt distant. Said she missed us. I listened without responding. People confuse silence with weakness. It's usually the opposite. I spent that night listing the last large items on Facebook Marketplace. Things that anchored me to the space. A buyer asked why I was selling so much at once. I told him I was simplifying. It was the truth. I didn't feel victorious. There was no surge of satisfaction. Just alignment. The world adjusting around decisions I'd already made. She thought his influence had elevated her. She didn't see how fragile it was once light hit it from the wrong angle. I didn't need to take him down. I just needed to stop holding the door open while gravity did the rest. The shift didn't happen loudly. It happened in rooms I wasn't in. I could tell by how she moved through the house. Less centered. More alert. Like someone waiting for a signal that never comes. Her phone stayed face up now. Notifications checked immediately, then again, as if the delay itself carried meaning. Influence works until it doesn't. After that, it leaves people exposed. She stopped staying out as late. When she did, she came back irritated instead of energized. The late-night Taco Bell stops disappeared. Whatever had filled her before wasn't doing the job anymore. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask anything. A gallery opening came and went without her usual glow. She mentioned it in passing, said the room felt different. Said people were distracted. Said someone important canceled last minute. I nodded once. Engineers know when a system is under review before anyone admits it. Her friends started acting careful around me. Polite, but observant. The kind of politeness that scans for cues. One of them asked how I was holding up. Not how we were doing. Just me. That's when I knew the story had shifted away from her control. At home, evenings went silent in a new way. The Xbox stayed off. No background noise. No shared distraction. Just space. She tried filling it with conversation, with commentary about her day, about things she thought would interest me. I listened without feeding it. Attention is currency. I stopped spending it. The bracelet stayed on her wrist, but it no longer felt celebratory. Pandora doesn't age well when the moment it represents starts collapsing. She adjusted it often, like it might slip off if she wasn't careful. One night, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through something without focus. I recognized the look. It's the same look clients get when a project loses backing. When the people they relied on stop returning calls. She asked if I'd heard anything strange. About him. About the gallery world. Her voice tried to sound casual. It failed. I told her I'd been busy. That was all. Later, I posted the last major listing on Facebook Marketplace. The bed frame. The final shared object with weight. Within minutes, someone messaged. Cash pickup. Quick. Efficient. I scheduled it for the next morning. She watched me type. Didn't ask what I was selling. She was starting to understand that questions no longer guaranteed answers. Social fallout doesn't look like confrontation. It looks like absence. Like rooms that stop opening. Like names that don't get repeated. She thought I was drifting. What she didn't see was that everything around her was quietly pulling away at the same time. Isolation doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in layers, the way dust does when no one's paying attention. She started staying home more, but not in a restful way. She hovered, moved from room to room without landing anywhere. The house had become a place she waited in, not lived in. Her phone was always in her hand, but the screen disappointed her more often than not. Whatever reassurance she used to receive had thinned out, delayed, or disappeared entirely. I was there, but only technically. I left early, came back late, and when our paths crossed, I kept my movements efficient. No wasted gestures. No unnecessary words. I'd learned that presence without engagement is more unsettling than absence. One evening, I came back from a long day and found her sitting on the floor of the living room, back against the couch, staring at the dark TV screen. The Xbox hadn't been turned on in weeks. It used to fill the space between us when we didn't know what to say. Now even that felt obsolete. Silence didn't need help anymore. She tried to tell me about her day, about meetings that didn't go anywhere, about messages left on read, about how the gallery felt colder lately. I listened the way I listened to distant traffic, acknowledging sound without tracing its source. When she paused, waiting for me to respond, I didn't rush to fill it. That's when the isolation really hit her. Not because I was gone, but because I was unreachable while still standing there. The bracelet was off that night. The Pandora piece sat on the coffee table like something she hadn't decided what to do with yet. Objects lose power when the story behind them collapses. She kept glancing at it, then away, as if it might accuse her of something. I packed another box in the bedroom and carried it out without announcing it. Clothes I didn't wear anymore. Books tied to conversations that were finished. I stacked them by the door quietly. Later, I took photos and posted them on Facebook Marketplace. The process was almost calming. Measure. Price. Release. She watched from the hallway. Didn't ask where the things were going. She was starting to understand that asking wasn't the same as being included. That night, she slept poorly. I could tell by the way she shifted, by the shallow rhythm of her breathing. I slept fine. Early mornings and long days have a way of clearing your head when your decisions are already made. She was alone long before she admitted it. And I was right there, close enough to see it happen, distant enough to never be pulled back in. She finally tried to stop the drift. It happened on a quiet night, the kind that makes everything feel louder than it is. I was at the kitchen counter, sorting through paperwork, reducing a life into neat piles. She stood across from me longer than necessary, waiting for me to notice her waiting. When I didn't look up, she spoke. Not accusing, not apologizing, just asking what had changed. I kept my voice steady. Said I'd been busy. Said work had shifted. Said phases have consequences if you let them run long enough. I didn't raise my tone. I didn't explain myself. Explanation implies negotiation. I was done negotiating. She moved closer, searching my face for something familiar. People do that when they realize they've misread silence as patience. She asked if I still loved her. The question landed softly, like it was afraid of the answer. I didn't respond right away. Pauses tell the truth better than sentences. When I finally spoke, I said love doesn't survive without access. And access, once revoked, doesn't get restored by panic. She tried to rewind time with words. Talked about confusion, about influence, about how it started as guidance, how it felt harmless until it wasn't. She framed it like an experiment that got out of hand. I listened without interruption. Engineers let systems run until they reveal their failure point. The bracelet wasn't on her wrist anymore. The Pandora piece sat in a drawer, out of sight, like something she didn't know how to justify. Symbols only work when both people believe in them. I stopped believing weeks ago. She reached for my arm, then stopped herself halfway. Even she could feel the distance now. Physical space had turned into something else. Something fixed. I told her I wasn't angry, that seemed to unsettle her more than anything. Anger would have meant engagement. This was neutrality, the absence of emotional fuel. She asked if we could start over. The word start sounded small in the space between us. I told her I had already started, just not with her. That was the moment she realized the pause she'd requested wasn't mutual anymore. That what she thought was a temporary adjustment had turned into a permanent shift she didn't authorize. I gathered the papers and walked past her, leaving her standing there with questions that no longer had leverage. Confrontation isn't about volume. It's about clarity. And clarity doesn't argue. It moves on. Her collapse didn't look dramatic. There were no scenes, no shouting, no public unraveling. It looked smaller than that, quieter, and that made it worse. She stopped going to the gallery altogether, said she was taking time. The word sounded hollow when she used it, like she'd borrowed it from someone else and forgotten why. The circle she'd tried so hard to enter had moved on without explanation. Calls weren't returned. Messages stayed unread. The mentor she once spoke about with reverence had gone silent, his name suddenly absent from conversations that used to orbit him. At home, she drifted. She cleaned things that were already clean, rearranged shelves that didn't need rearranging. She hovered near me like proximity might restore relevance. It didn't. One afternoon, she opened a drawer and froze. I knew which one before she said anything. The one where the bracelet used to be. The Pandora piece wasn't there anymore. I'd moved it days earlier, packed it with other small objects that no longer belonged to a shared story. She didn't accuse me of taking it. She just stood there, realizing how many things had disappeared without announcement. That night, memories started hitting her out of sequence. I could see it in her face. Moments resurfacing without warning. Me fixing something quietly while she talked over me. Me showing up to events without needing credit. Me being steady while she reached outward for more. At the time, those details felt ordinary to her. Now they arrived sharp, one after another, each one landing harder than the last. She tried to talk about the past like it was a safety net. About how I'd always been there. About how I understood her. About how stable we were. Stability feels invisible until it's gone. Then it becomes the only thing you can see. I stayed consistent. Early mornings. Long days. No explanations. I sold the last of the shared items on Facebook Marketplace without ceremony. When buyers came, she watched from the doorway, realizing how easily pieces of our life transferred to strangers. She asked if we could fix this, not with urgency, with fear. Fear that comes when status, attention, and certainty collapse at the same time. I told her I was already living differently, that her crisis didn't require my participation. She cried quietly that night, not in front of me. In the bathroom, door closed, like she was trying not to disturb the version of me that no longer responded. The hardest part for her wasn't losing him. It was understanding that the man she replaced had been the only one who actually stayed. The end didn't arrive with an argument. It arrived on a normal morning, which made it final. She woke up early for once, maybe hoping to catch me before I left, maybe hoping routine could be rewired if she entered it soon enough. I was already dressed. Calm. Precise. The way I look when a decision has passed every internal review. She stood in the doorway and asked when I stopped loving her. Not accusing. Not pleading. Just trying to locate the moment where things slipped beyond recovery. I didn't answer right away. I finished what I was doing, folded the last item, closed the bag. Then I told her it wasn't a moment. It was a process. That love doesn't vanish suddenly. It fades when it's put on mute long enough to forget its own sound. She said she'd only asked for a pause. Said she never meant for it to turn into this. I told her pauses aren't neutral. They create space, and space doesn't stay empty. It fills with whatever you feed it, or whatever replaces you. She stepped aside as I walked past her, instinctively making room. That small movement said more than any apology could have. She already knew she wasn't stopping me. Outside, the driveway was empty. The Dodge Ram was gone. I'd moved it before dawn, parked it where it belonged now, somewhere that didn't require explanation. When she noticed, her breath caught, sharp and quiet. Vehicles are habits made visible. When they disappear, the message is immediate. She followed me to the door anyway, asked if this was really it, asked if there was any version of us left to salvage. I looked at her and felt something settle, not hard, not cold, just clear. I told her I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. She didn't cry then. She stood very still, like someone absorbing a structural failure too large to react to. I walked out without slamming anything, without taking satisfaction. Satisfaction would have meant I was still attached. Later that day, I drove past Lowe's without stopping. I didn't need materials anymore. I wasn't fixing what was broken. I was building something new, somewhere else. That evening, my phone stayed quiet. No messages. No questions. Silence, finally mutual. She'd paused intimacy, thinking it was temporary. I muted the relationship and let it end naturally. That wasn't cruelty. That was self-respect, finishing the job she started. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.